Dear all, welcome to this session, the second session of last day. We eminent speaker Professor Dr. Sanjeev Marwa with us. Now I would like to invite Diksha to introduce the speaker.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. Sanjeev Marwa. Dr. Sanjeev Marwa is the director of JK Business School. He has held leadership positions in academics and corporate since last 3 decades. He has lead MBA accreditation of the University Business School. He is an expert in the area of strategic management and customer retention. Professor Marwa has authored many research papers, articles, and also presented and published various research papers in the national and international conferences. He is a member of Strategic Management Forum at IIM Consortium supported organization. He has conducted many international management development programs for the academicians and corporate executives. Professor Marwa has been closely associated with Sauder School of Business, University of Vancouver, British Columbia, and he is also associated with Thames Valley University, UK, Singapore Management University, Kathmandu School of Management, California State University, and Philadelphia University, USA. He was invited to speak the prestigious debate at Oxford University on September 27, 2019. He is the founder editor of the Referee Journal. He has published 2 course books on research methodology and a textbook on project management distributed by Wiley Publishers. He has also edited research based book for academic leaders on leadership and management. He is an MBA and also PhD in the area of customer relationship in management, and he is also the recipient of Rashtriya Gaurav Samman Award in the 2015. And he also received various awards like Academic Leader Award of the year 2016 and also received Leader in Asia with Global Vision and Outlook Award in the year 2019. And today he delivered his lecture on preparing action plans for change. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Diksha, for introduction. Now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Pankaj Madan sir to welcome Professor Dr. Sanjeev Marwa sir and for a mantra and his blessings. Over to Pankaj Madan sir.
I heartily welcome Professor Dr. Sanjeev ji. Can we see Professor Marwa? Professor Marwa, are you there? Hello? Hello? Dr. Suyash, can you just contact him?
Sure, sir.
Okay. Till then, I think I can continue with the shloka. I am taking shloka from Yajurved, in which they talk about why human body and how a leader, as having a human body, how he can use that human body for leadership or for the welfare of the organization. So in this, the use of hands have been explained. it says, Bahu se bal mindriyam hasto ke karm briyam atma chatmuro mam. This is the shloka from Yajurveda 20.7, which says that may our arms and senses be strong, let both our hands be masculine, may our soul and heart be compatible with our religion to serve the humanity, and be brave.
I hope my screen is visible now.
Yes, Professor Marwa, you are most welcome to this last day, second session of this FDP. Everyone has been waiting eagerly for your deliberation and for your program, because I shared the leadership action plan with them, and sorry, very few could submit it till now, although we have extended that time till tomorrow morning, till tomorrow 12 noon. So we all wish that how this action plan will be made, and how we can fill this action plan format. So we all of us wish that we'll get a good guidance, and we know that you are a very famous and renowned professor in NCR and around. So we heartily welcome you to this program, sir. Most welcome. Please continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Madan. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
This is a story I'm sure all of us have read. Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go? Said Alice. That depends very much where you want to get to, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you go. This is what vision is all about. And this is what we have learned over last few days, how much is the vision and the action plan is important. Some problem in the strike advancement. एक वाइब्रेशन से देखें. All right, I think the main danger in this life are the people who want to change everything or nothing. None of this is desirable, because we have learned over last few years of our life that things change incrementally. You cannot change much in the behavioral aspects of other people unless they want to be part of that change. I noticed in the last few days, my predecessors have been talking to you about the leadership plan, about the concept of change management, how change management is the application of a structured process and set of tools to achieve a desired outcome. And we have also understood in the last few days that there is a structured and systematic approach which is required to deal with the change. It has to be done at the perspective of organization and also at the individual level. Excuse me. The systematic approach and application of knowledge, tools, and resources deal with the change. And we must understand that change happens when there is a person to lead. His intent is known to each one of us, and the change happens incrementally. When we are talking about the change in context of academics, then of course we must understand the paradigm that we are talking about. Last year, I got invited to Oxford University for a discussion on how often the syllabi needs to change. At the end of the discussion, we could all agree that there is no standard time frame in any particular faculty as to when the curriculum needs to change. But the journey of arriving at that and leaving it to the faculty and the departments was an amazing experience. Let me take you back to the paradigm of what academic education is all about. I read it from the slide which is visible to you. Students typically spend 3 to 4 years in institutes to assimilate the current practices, create knowledge, disseminate, and prepare students for entrepreneurial, corporate, and policy making roles. Now, of course, the faculty members understand that is their role, and the practical needs to be built into the students while they are students at the campus, and when they join, when they are placed, they should be productive for the industry. That is the perspective with which students come to the campus. Now, certain departments, certain areas like law, management, the placements were high, and students could be better prepared to go straight and start delivering. And that is why we would have noticed that the fees have also increased over time for certain practically courses where the practice could be urgently or immediately ingrained into the academic programs. But it so happened that surveys after surveys in India also noticed that students are not that well prepared as they ought to be as far as the practice is concerned. And there is a huge gap. I just heard somebody was asking in the previous session about the linkage that needs to be increased with the industry. And let me tell you that this is a global problem. What industry wants and what colleges prepare, there is a gap. And that gap needs to be filled up. It is a lead follow cycle. There is no doubt about it. Sometimes the industry carries out the practices and the colleges follow those practices and make curriculum around that. Many a times it has also happened like balanced scorecard. A professor comes out with the academic system and the corporates take note of that, and then they tend to follow up and take those parameters. Like today, balanced card is widely followed at various places in the country, on this planet, to do benchmarking. Many of the corporates, including not even corporates, but the countries and the districts, councils are using balance card to check how much have they performed compared to the past. So but that lead follow cycle is always there, would always continue to exist. How fast we can reduce that is something that academics and the colleges face this challenge. And one of these challenges would be addressed today as a case study today in this presentation. Now, continuously revisiting the syllabus and innovating tailoring of learning resources will only help us to maintain the relevance of college output, because if the college outputs are not relevant, students will not find purpose in education. And if they don't find purpose in education, the very fact that existence for which the institutes exist gets questioned. And they have been questioned in various streams of engineering and management in our country in the last few years. Leadership is about change. It's about taking people from where they are now to where they need to be. The best way to get people to venture into unknown terrain is to make it desirable by taking them there in their imagination first. It all begins between these 2 ears. If I am prepared to do something new, I will be able to do something new. But if it's not part of my imagination, the change will not take place. And that's the reality of the world today. Of course, this slide Dr. Madan had shared with you day before yesterday, and I sort of liked it. In fact, I'm going to paste it on my notice board because it's such a wonderful slide to look at. Every time we think of bring about change, the first question comes to our mind is, do I have the authority and the power to change? Am I the change leader? Are people going to accept me as a change leader? And most of the time, the answer would be, you don't even need to look at this question, because change begins when you are ready for the change. How quickly is the change needed? What is the scope of change? What needs to be preserved and what needs to be changed? Because as I mentioned earlier, you can't change everything. What parameters you need to change? What is the change that you want to bring around? You have to introspect and make it part of a structured plan. If it is not structured, If it is not written as a plan, that implementation will never take place. How diverse people are involved. There would be some stakeholders who would be directly involved. There could be many stakeholders who would probably not be directly involved, but they could influence the change process. What is the capability of managing this change? Is the workforce ready? Are my colleagues ready? Are the resources available? This is a paradigm the change agent needs to address, because unless you have ticked all these questions, you will not be able to write your change plan. Once you have ticked these questions, you are ready to write your change plan. I have noticed you have been given this presentation and you have been told to write a change plan for yourself. I'm sure you are amidst the process of writing a change plan. I do hope the presentation will help you in writing a change plan. Again, I love this slide when I saw it with Dr. Madan sharing it with you the other day. You will have all kinds of behavioral parameters coming into when the change does happens. Anxiety, happiness, fear, threat, guilt, depression, hostility, all this are part of it. But then there are people who are willing to move with you, and you have to make them part of your vision. You have to make them part of your journey so that they move along with you and the change gets implemented. There would be questions, there is no doubt about it. Questions like, can I cope? Do I really do this? Who am I? I can see myself in the future or not? Is questions which will come in the mind of others. They would look at you for answers many a times. If you're able to furnish the right answer, they will move with you. In case they are not convinced with the vision, the change will never ever take place, because change requires participation of stakeholders. Participation of stakeholders requires their conviction and commitment to the cause that you have envisioned in your mind. That envisioning has to move from your mind to their mind. They have to be willing participants of this change, and then only the change happens. There are two popular models for this. One is, of course, the model of change and by Kurt Lewin, and the other one is John Cotter's. Both of you have been introduced to you yesterday, but I would, in spite of the fact that I know I'm repeating, it's very important, because unless you understand the change management model, you will not be able to complete the exercise of writing your change plan. So Levin's change model talks about unfreezing, change, and refreezing. This is a practice-based model which talks about unfreezing. That means identifying what is the present state of affairs, where you want to change, what kind of support is coming to you, and are we prepared for the change. Unless the other participants understand the need for change doesn't happen. So unfreezing process also requires identifying the content of change, what needs to change, what will not change, and what is the importance of the change. If it is not conveyed clearly, the change will not happen. So unfreezing is all about identifying the parameters for change and giving a convincing reason to all stakeholders about why the change is important. You will have to dispel the doubts and concerns of the participants in the change process while the unfreezing is taking place. Then, of course, when the change process begins, you need to communicate. You communicate the benefit of the change process, what is happening. If there are doubts, they needs to be dispelled. In case there are questions that needs to be answered, if there are operational changes which are coming up, because the plan, all plans are not perfect. Many plans would require reworking during the planning implementation process. So those reworking needs to be convinced to the participants and involve them. Once they have identified this, that the change has happening for good, they would be participating in the process. And if the people are participating in the process, the change will happen. But more than that, once the change has happened, the exercise of refreezing is extremely important. The change has happened, you need to anchor and make it part of the culture. The change needs to be sustained. It has to be permanent, because the change for the sake of change and reverting to the status quo in the future means the change has not happened. It was just an exercise which was done for the lip service level. Refreezing also will require support, training, and celebrations, because any change which gets implemented and the participants are not made to feel part of the rewarding system will not be permanent. This is the first model, and the second model that you have discussed the other day was Cotter's change model. I will repeat that also, where the emphasis of the model is to act as a guide for leaders like you. I often say that all teachers are leaders because they go to the classroom and they are there like the carrier in this bicycle. Bicycle has a carrier which is generally in the rear part of the bicycle, where the first teacher of your cycling would have been sitting. It's spreading the legs both sides to ensure that you don't fall. And then the cycling exercise begins. You have doubts that the cycle would fall into either side, but you are comfortable that there is somebody sitting on the carrier going to control it, and it will not let you fall on either one of the side. And slowly and steadily you start cycling, and at some time you are cycling on your own. You don't even need the person sitting on your carrier. The person sitting on the carrier was a teacher who taught you cycling. Today, when the teacher goes to the classroom, he's a leader because he is like that friend of yours sitting on the carrier who is going to help to make the career of the students who are there in the class. What to teach, how to teach, and how to assess is a question that needs to be asked by the teacher every day. And that model of a college functioning is all about the role of a teacher as leader in the classroom, outside the classroom, because most of the learning takes place beyond the classrooms. Now, Cotter says that there is a set process, and I'll come straight to the 6-step process as Dr. Madan has shortened it. Step 1, create urgency. Examine the catalyst for change. Develop a vocal group. Share the vision with the participants. Make it part of a powerful group. Create a coalition of friends who are going to be participating in the change process. Write a vision plan, create it, develop it, communicate it, so that your vision between your two ears becomes the vision of the participants who are also with you in your change journey. Empower them, because if they are not taking decisions on your behalf to bring about the change, they would not be able to implement the change. You have to empower your colleagues, you have to empower your students to take decisions. Remove the obstacles, change the system, encourage risk, because since they are part of your vision, they are bringing the change for you as envisioned between your two ears and their two ears. You have to celebrate short-term wins. There would be a plan for improvement. Not all victories are advancement, that there would be strategic drift. There would be changes which you would like to celebrate. There could be small incremental wins, probably not very important for you, but it's very important for the person who has made that change, even if howsoever small that change could be. You need to recognize and reward the people who bring in those changes step by step, because their celebrations will only lead to their conformance of your vision. Consolidate the new approaches as in the previous model. Refreeze, you need to consolidate the approach, make it permanent, and develop staff who would implement the vision and connect the new approach to the success. This is what the Cotter had envisioned in his model. Initially, we start with a sense of urgency, a powerful coalition, creating a joint vision with the team, and then empowering the team, and then planning and creating the short-term wins, and then making it permanent, and then of course consolidated improvements over and over, so that the change that you just brought about becomes a permanent fixture of your organization if it is not revisited very often, that change can revert back to the earlier, which is not really appreciable, because then the change is not permanent. It was the temporary change which happened because you wanted to change something, they participated, you made the change, you decided to lose focus, and then it all reverts back to the earlier instance, which you are not interested in, because what you're interested in is to bring about permanent change. I understand that there is an activity shared with you, which is about coming out with a coming out with a change plan. And here we are. In fact, with my colleague Professor Supriya, who is also here with me, both of us made this case study on outcome-based management education involving stakeholders. Most of you are from different parts of the country, and most of you are aware of the new accreditation process of National Board of Accreditation, which is outcome based, which has turned to be outcome based in the last 2 years or so. In fact, any institute in the country today, if decides to go for accreditation, they have to implement the outcome based process. And outcome based management education or engineering education cannot be done till the time all stakeholders are part of it. This is a case study that I'm going to be sharing with you now. Outcome-based education. All of you are aware of this, so I will not spend much time on outcome-based education, but will talk to you more as a case study perspective to bridge gap between academic and industry with outcome-based education with the involvement of students and faculty, which is important because they are the most important stakeholders. Scope, of course, would include the alumni, the industry, and the management team as well, including your staff member, because unless everybody involved in the institutional method is participating, the change never happens. The objective of this particular case study was to take input from the industry about expectations from the students and integrate it in a defining program outcomes. To introduce program outcomes and course outcomes based on higher level thinking skills as per Bloom's taxonomy. And of course, the third objective was to measure those course outcomes and program outcomes on attainment levels with well-defined rubrics. This is the process of accreditation, and I presume most of you have touched it now here and there, as unless you have been accredited long time back and you have not refreshed yourself. Most of you are aware this is the process that any institute would require to make a change. Now, when we decided to implement outcome-based education, the first starting point was, why should we make the change? And all of you have, understood in the last few days. I remember Dr. Mittal telling you, somebody had asked a question, sir, what is a couch potato? And he says, couch potato is the one who will keep sitting there and is resisting the change because he is not convinced about the change. And you will have all kind of participants in the change process because they would not change because they think that everything seems to be doing well now. Why should we change? Change happens only because people are convinced to act, and there are some people who would be lazy. There are some people who would be in disagreement with you. Unless you win them over, the change will not happen. So when we decided at JK Business School that we need to move to outcome-based education in our institute, the starting point was not to conduct a workshop with the faculty members and make around and convince them that, our accreditation is important, and because accreditation is important, outcome-based education is important, and if because outcome-based education is important, therefore let us all implement outcome-based education. Believe me, this would have been a wrong start, because then everybody would be part of the change because it is required by the regulator. And when the government orders arrive and when somebody tells you from the top that you need to change because this is the new norm, nobody wants to change. They will change because they are convinced that there is a reason for change which they are ready to adapt to. They will not change because there's a letter coming to them that the change is required. So we went back on the notice board and we went back on the drawing board and decided, let us look at why should we change. And then we talked to our alumni members for the last few years and asked them that where is the gap. We realized that the gap is huge because the kind of jobs that I have shared with you in this slide that are coming up, computer vision engineer, information security analyst, 3D printing technician, data architect, data scientist, testing engineer, research session language processing engineer, robotic process automation developer, business analyst, solution architect, migration engineer, cloud architect. For none of these new jobs, engineering students are prepared in the engineering colleges. It's a fact. Management students are prepared in the management institutes. They are not. But these are the jobs of 3 years from now. And our students, some of our students could be graduating 4 years from now. Are we preparing them for the job, or are we teaching them something because we think that that is something that an engineer ought to know? Yes, engineer ought to know certain basic skills. Yes, but then are we preparing him for the corporate job? The answer is no, because all this is known to us. All this is known to us as the emerging technologies. All this is known to us that these emerging technologies will require these kinds of jobs for our engineers. But unfortunately, our content, our syllabi is not attuned to preparing students for these kind of jobs. And that is where that is the first reason for change. The second, of course, we noticed that automation is changing many of the job sectors. And when we noticed, this was about a year back or so, and we realized accommodation and food services, manufacturing, mining, utilities, wholesale trade, finance and insurance, this is the percentage of automation potential in these industries. And imagine, 1 year back we thought education services had just 27% automation potential, and we were so wrong, because one virus proved us wrong. And today, the automation is at its peak in education services, because one virus has put all the teachers and the students at home. And the only help which has come to the society has come from the technology and the automation. We were using video calls, but just for fun. Who would have noticed, who would have thought in the month of February that we would be teaching through video calls 1 month from now? I remember our first session on video happened somewhere in the middle of March, because the students were not able to come back just after Holi, and the term had to begin. And I think probably 15th or 16th of March, our first video interaction took place, and my esteemed colleague refused to take the class. She says, I can't speak to the screen. I'm not comfortable. I want to see 40 students in my classroom. That is what gives me energy, and that's how I can teach. But we all agreed in that meeting, I remember, that we don't have a choice, and we have to automate ourselves fast. Fortunately, Google was quite supportive, and they gave us the Google Classroom facilities. Within, I think, probably about 3 days, they replied to our mail and gave us video recording of classrooms, and their entire Google Classroom, lapping up happened within, I think, by middle of March. Of course, we have been using Google Classroom for about a year, but that was just for taking the attendance of students. And now everything shifted to Google Classroom. Automation is changing the industries, and now it will be much, much faster. We know, perhaps we were not that convinced about a year back, but we made it as an important change. Job obsolescence is happening because automation is changing the way work is being carried out at the corporate workplace, and therefore our education system has to change. Now, we also studied as part of this survey that technology by proportion of companies likely to adopt, and we thought that big data analytics is going to be adopted by about 85% of the organizations. Robots will take some time, maybe 23%. 3D printing will take about 40%, but these are the technologies which are going to be emerging. Internet of Things, we thought, is going to be moving fast forward. We did not imagine how the video interface is going to move that fast. But today, I'm more convinced than I was convinced about a year back. I'm sure some of my faculty colleagues who are listening today would also agree with me that the change has certainly got advanced. It has got accelerated. And now the augmented and virtual reality, which we thought earlier that someday augmented reality is going to help us to order the furniture from home. Perhaps someday the augmented and virtual reality is going to transport me from my boardroom, where I'm sitting today, to the room of the particular student, not only through a virtual video exchange, but probably a 3D effect could take place. These are things with the technology which are available to us, but we never applied. And we realized about a year back, as part of our interaction with our alumni and industry, that the change is happening much faster. And they convinced us, and our teacher also got convinced in these interactions, that the syllabi, the content needs to change much faster. Of course, when we carried out in the month of August last year about the perception, and the perception is all of your faculty members. I've been a faculty member for almost more than a decade. So I am absolutely convinced with the outcome came to us. Workload, students have to be promoted, it requires training, OBE is understood, it requires implementation. Implementation should be gradual in nature. This is what was the outcome of the initial survey in the month of August. And I'm sure all of you would agree that, in the mind of the faculty members, this is what goes on when somebody comes and says that change of syllabi, the change in teaching approach has to happen. But why do we need to make changes in the teaching approach? Because the industry, who's the customer of our students, who's our customer and who is going to be employing the students, have their mind something else. We realized when we talked to our alumni and industry, they were talking about critical thinking, innovation, problem solving, employability of graduate competencies, research, analytical skills, leadership, communication, innovative models. And this is something, which was important to us. We knew it all along, and we knew that it ideally could be made as part of curriculum, but generally we were giving it as an add-on support to our students. We were conducting a lot of club activities, we were conducting a lot of cultural programs in the campus, and we thought all of them were, harping the leadership skills, improving the communication skills of the student, and we thought we were doing enough. But perception of the industry and the perception of the faculty, when the entire presentation took place in the month of August, we realized that the gap is sort of well understood, and we all agreed that we need to change. And when we decided to change, of course, the biblical structure, if I can say so, was Bloom's taxonomy, because Bloom's taxonomy very clearly laid it out for us that, most of the paper banks that we have, or the questions bank that we have in the institute, were focusing more on remembering and understanding, and very less on applying, evaluating, and creating, because we noticed that the assessment system or the training system were at the much lower level. Most of our colleagues accepted that we are talking about recalling the facts or explaining the ideas and concepts. And generally, we often have one or two case studies, which is the original piece of work, but the our teaching system was definitely at the bottom of the pyramid. And to make that, as to take students to a higher level, will have to change our academic system to some extent. We will have to change our assessment system to a very large extent, and we have to understand that our assessments, or our understanding of what education purpose is in the classroom, needs to go and complete change. Like to join now? I would like to invite Professor Supriya Sehgal, my colleague, who has been part of this journey with me all along, as about a year back, and I would like to invite her and carry on the case study discussion with you, Professor Supriya.
You have to move it
Please, come.
very close. Have you muted it?
It's fine. This is working. Advancement.
Thank you, Dr. Marva, for giving me this opportunity. Hello, Dr. Pankaj Madam. Thanks to you also, and it's good to see you here. Uh, so, as Dr. Marva has already pointed out, one cannot eschew the fact that the world around us is changing at a breathtaking speed. And along with this, especially due to digital disruption, the skill requirement of the industry has undergone a sea change. And I think this has made it imperative to shift from input based education to output based education. So, in view of this same, it was decided to introduce outcome based education at JK Business School. Now, again, as pointed out by Dr. Marva, in order to successfully implement a change, the need for same must be justified at the very beginning. So we have already seen the external factors which were forcing us to look into our existing systems and see what kind of changes are required. But we need to see internally as well. So on 31st August, we examined existing teaching and learning systems and made the case for implementation of outcome-based education. And we saw that there were certain strengths, but at the same time, there were certain gaps, and there were certain areas of weakness which needed improvement. A detailed survey was carried out to map the perception of faculty, students, and industry partners, and it has been already discussed with you. Now, on 14 September, we met the Board of Studies and discussed why we need to implement outcome-based education. We agreed on a lot of aspects. Now, the BOS was attended by the industry experts, the academicians from different institutes, the alumni, and the faculty of the college. A detailed discussion took place, and it was agreed upon that some change is definitely required in the system. To what extent, it was still needed to be seen. On 5th October 2019, we met Academic Advisory Board and made the recommendation of implementation of outcome-based education. So you can see that while we were holding discussion with faculty and students about the outcome-based education, about program outcomes and program education objective, we were also completing the process of taking all the stakeholders on board, be it students, to faculty, to industry experts, industry nominees, fellow academicians, all were made the part of the process. Because as it suggests, the objective was outcome-based education involving stakeholders. We all know that students join higher education institution in the hope of getting better placement. The industry, they come to these higher education institutions in the hope of getting students that would have skills matching with their requirement. Right now, this is very important that the expectations of the students and expectations of the industry are matched, and it can be done only through the ways how we can implement learning systems in the college. We then took the proposal to Board of Governors, which was headed by our chairperson Abhishek Singhania ji. We also invited experts like Dr. Chaturvedi from DEMTech, who have already implemented outcome-based education in their institution, and it's doing great. So, after getting the support of Board of Governors, we had several rounds of discussion. There were in-depth analysis of challenges that we would be facing. There were active efforts that would be required to remove any obstacle that would come our way. And we had to take all the stakeholders' commitment, which so far we had been getting excellent support, which convinced us that we are in the right direction. This is not something that we want only for accreditation purpose. This is something that the students need, and this is something that the industry wants, that the industry is expecting. They also feel that it is high time the learning systems in the higher education institutions should be mirroring the skill requirements of the industry. So after this detailed discussions and various rounds of discussions with management, faculty, staff, and students, and of course we did reach out to the parents also to leave no stone unturned, as the parents are also very important stakeholders. And we decided that we will be implementing the outcome-based education. We'll implement it as a pilot stage for first 6 months and then review our results and go on from there. After this, again on 15 November, after we had started the development, re-looking at our vision and mission, developing our POs and COs, if this BOS entire vision and mission statements were read, POs were read, the program specific outcomes were that were designed by the faculty in discussion with the industry. They were also discussed, right? So that we have a clear mapping of the vision mission statements with the PEOs and the PSOs. The POs were finally approved by the faculty council. We then now moved on onto the students who are very important stakeholders. And it was very important that they are not only informed about this process, but they are involved in the process from the very beginning. So an open house was conducted by Dr. Marva and an expert from the industry. So a detailed discussion was carried out with the students. Students were told about the outcome-based education, what kind of changes would be there, how the delivery of the systems will change, how the assessment methodology will evolve. And of course, we faced lots of questions from students. They had lots of queries, especially related to the assessment systems. And of course, it was a change they were not expecting, in the mid of their session. But these were very successfully, answered by our experts and director. And the students also realize that, okay, then if the systems looks better, and they will probably be able to gauge their own learning better this way, and they will probably be able to find better where they stand after 3 years, where they stand after 4 years, right? And this system ensures that they are not only learning from faculty, but they are also learning to learn. Can I please request everyone to mute their microphones? Yes, the mic. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So once the students were explained and the entire process and methodology was explained to them, we came back to our faculty, and the feedback, the reservations, the challenges they were facing in the creation of course outcomes in the PSOs, they were all reviewed, and it was decided that we must need certain workshops on outcome-based learning, on Bloom's taxonomy and rubrics for the faculty and the students for their better understanding. Because we did not want to impose any change on either faculty or the students. We wanted them on board, right? We wanted them to have a very clear understanding, and we wanted them to be as excited about this change as we were. Vishnuji, slide change nahi ho raha. Can you please help me? Slide change. Okay. Okay, it is gone. Okay. So, keeping in mind, we obviously saw that faculty was facing certain challenges in the entire process of designing course outcomes and then mapping those course outcomes during the assessment process. And in the assessment process itself, we decided to attend the workshop on outcome-based education at NITR, Chandigarh. So as you can see that all the senior colleagues, it's the director, myself, the dean, the program convener, Dr. Swapna, we all went there to, and some faculty members to, have a clear understanding, of a better understanding about the outcome-based education, because we knew that if we want to bring change, we must do it with full preparation, and we must provide all the support that is required by the faculty in bringing about this change. So we came back from OB, have a much better understanding of the not only the processes of designing course outcomes, about the rubric system, but also about the assessment. And the best part about these assessments is, which I'll discuss in, later, is the gap analysis. Coming back from there, we decided to share this knowledge with the students and faculty. And on 25th November, I conducted a workshop. In fact, there were a series of workshops for OB for students, where we explained to them how Bloom's taxonomy is suggesting a path that is different from the path that they were earlier following, but it is much more effective. Right? We also explained the rubric system to the students. We showed how the rubric system would work. We gave them examples of rubric system by taking their presentations on rubrics. We later on used it for their summer internship project, etc. इधर ही आना पड़ेगा विष्णु जी. It's again not changing. What is the reason? I did it. Okay. So again on December 14, the Board of Studies, including the head of the departments, alumni, the academicians from Delhi NCR, the industry experts, we all met, and we had committed that we will review this process regularly. So we were meeting, as you have seen, we were meeting more often than when we meet usually. Usually we have these meetings around, once a quarter, but here we had already met 3 times in 1 quarter. But then again, we discussed in detail the processes of the part implementation of OBE and its progress in the classroom. And it was decided that industry is still needing some more expertise, some more skills from the students, and on their advice, we decided to introduce Python, Tableau, and SQL, and certain digital advanced certification courses. We decided to make them compulsory for the students on the basis of the feedback we received from the industry, the inputs we received from the industry, to meet the growing demand for the skills in the industry. So for the same, the faculty was sent to JK Technosoft. They visited JK Technosoft to discuss the curriculum and to get training on Python. So these faculty, Dr. Swapna and Dr. Sumandev, they are already experts. But since we were introducing it, we were making it compulsory for all the students. We decided that yes, they need to go and rebrush their skills from the industry itself. So it is in fact a very important part of the culture now that the faculty, at the same time, see, we give a lot of training sessions for the industry, but at the same time, the faculty also receives a lot of training from the industry, which is one of the very good outcome of the outcome-based education implementation that we have done here. Now, in these 6 months, we were able to form a very powerful cohesion with students, alumni, industry, having a shared understanding that we have moved forward with outcome-based education to ensure that the expectation of the industry, who's our end consumer, is met. Right? Introducing the industry expectation into our learning process was a big challenge. Therefore, all the outcomes, all the rubrics, all the assessments were designed, all the instruments were designed in such a way that all these instruments contribute towards the larger objective for which the institute exists. Now, I'll say that no initiative is complete unless we take continuous feedback. So after 6 months, we took the feedback from the students, and as the charts here suggest, that the outcome-based education was well received with students. The students displayed a better understanding of procedures and efforts required to implement the outcome-based education. There was increased awareness about outcome-based education. There was increased awareness among students about what is expected of them, what they are expected to learn from the courses that they are learning, so that they can gauge their own progress. The feedback also revealed that around 70.8% students believe that this system of outcome-based education will help them gauge their level of preparedness for industry. An equally high number, around 69% students, believe that outcome-based learning will prepare them for lifelong learning. Because we are not creating students who are dependent on rote learning. We are creating students who will be evolved from the understanding stage to evaluation stage to the stage of creation. So, and then equal number of students believe that the understanding the course learning outcomes will help them do better in their assessments as well, to help them do better in their end term examinations as well. And of course, as Professor Marva has already suggested, that we used Bloom's taxonomy to develop our course outcomes. And now I must say that Bloom's taxonomy is far advanced than the earlier learning system that were being followed, as there is a swipe from evaluation to creation stage. Earlier, the systems, if they were more based on making the student understand the concept, making the students learn the concepts, right? And I think the entire system believed that if the students understand the concepts, if the students they have learned all the concept, they will be easily able to get some initial training at the industry and be able to implement those the learnings that they have done. But now we have moved from, in fact, the entire system from the students, faculty, we are inching towards the creation aspect, which is very much apparent from our assessments, end-term assessments, which has undergone a sea change. Earlier, the assessments were based mainly, some parts were based on case study and some other parts were based on just rote learning and understanding. But now we see questions like the assignments like creation of a business plan, creation of a strategy for a particular business, the creation of a financial plan for a business. So this shows that the faculty has now gained confidence in the system, and they both students and faculty realize that it is a much better system that was being followed earlier. And I think this is the main reason that we finally slowly and steadily able to get complete confidence and agreement of students and faculty both in this entire process. Then, of course, in January, after the first trimester, yeah, I want to go back. The Academic Advisory Board met on 8 February. The entire assessments, the results were reviewed. As you can see, the certain gaps were found, and the strategy was formulated as to how to meet those gaps. Now, I told you this is the best part in the program outcome outcome-based education system, that we can assess lifetime life, that what are the gap, where we want the students to be, where they are actually, the students can see for themselves, the faculty can see, we can analyze those gaps, and we can take steps to bridge those gaps. Now, there are various ways that were identified to bridge those gaps, like changes in curriculum, like some batch could be bridged through inter-house activities, club activities. Some gaps there could be bridged through certain live projects from the industry, some practical approach followed by the students. But the important part was that we were able to identify the gaps, and we took decisions to bridge those gaps. Finally, on 8 February, the full and final adoption of OBE was approved, because the first trimester implementation of outcome-based education was touted as success by the faculty, by the students, and finally by our Academic Advisory Board. It was definitely a party time, and definitely we were planning a big party, but due to COVID-19, the only party that we can have now is to enjoy that we have developed into a system which is much more successful, it is much more satisfying, and the best party, the best reward I think we all are getting is that we have been part of this very important change. And impacts about this of this change have been visible from the very beginning. As I have already pointed out, we were already able to build a good cohesion, a very strong cohesion with all our stakeholders, from the students to parents to industry experts to academicians from other colleges. So everybody was on board, everybody pitched in, and we were able to get very good inputs from the industry. There was reformation of curriculum, there was better improvement in curriculum, the assessment practices are much better, right? Learning is now articulated in terms of observable outcomes. Gaps I have already discussed with you. So the entire focus has shifted from content focused learning to student focused learning. It is the student who is at the center, because, as I always like to say, that students are our raw materials who we need to process for industry, right? And of course, we are giving now the best of the treatment, the best of the processing facilities to the student, which I think to some extent the results we have already seen during our SIPs. And since we are getting better inputs from the industry, the curriculum has advanced, we have better practices in terms of assessments. So we are definitely hoping that we will get a better accreditation. I may have made it all look very easy, because whatever we achieved in 6 months, I think I took only 10 minutes to share it with you all. But believe me, there have been challenges. And the importance of communication in change cannot be overstated. I would like to request Dr. Marwa to come and share how he was able to manage all the challenges and how he used communication as very important tool. Thank you.
So the bald man is back. Of course, the journey started as we discussed, and you've been discussing it for last 1 week, about creating a sense of urgency. And this sense of urgency would not have got established if our surveys were not presented to the staff and faculty and also to our students, because they all partnered in this only because they realized that this would improve the quality of program, it would improve placements, and students will have an advantage. And if we don't do it, and if the students are not corporate ready, they would certainly feel there is a challenge in the placement, and they probably need to be participating it more vocally. And when the students start participating in the process, it becomes confirmatory. Of course, excuse me. Of course, communication, as Professor Supriya mentioned, is an important part. And we were not only communicating inside the organization, we were communicating outside the organization also about outcome-based education, because we know every time we talk, our resolve becomes clearer. I remember I started my PhD in 1999. I ended up in 2007. For first 2-3 years, it was a tough journey. But one of my gurus told me that, Dr. Marwa, in case you want to actually do your PhD, without which you cannot survive in the academic system, howsoever top experience you might have from the corporate, please tell PhD. And I remember I followed my professor diligently. I told everybody I am enrolled in a PhD program and I am on to my PhD and it will finish over in 6 months' time, 1 year time. I am going ahead. Very soon, my PhD would be submitted. I am carrying out the survey. The submission has happened. The Viva is pending. The more people I tell outside that I am doing this, it becomes more important for me to deliver inside, because I now their expectations have been raised, because I am committing that I am doing this change. And surely, I will have nowhere else to hide, because I have told the whole world that we are implementing OBE based method. Of course, as there is a sheet which has been shared with all of you about the action plan. This is the same action plan as has been shared with you for your action plan in the kind of change that you want to bring in. And you would have noticed that at certain instances the authorized approach was used, but as soon as the everybody was on board, the guiding coalition was created. Then it was all a teamwork. And that the communication process in leadership style would vary from time to time. It cannot be one style cannot fit all, and therefore we had to come down to a democratic process. And as faculty members, we are great thinkers, and we want that whether you're the director or the chairman of the organization, you got to respect me. I will take my own decisions. And if you have to implement any change in the academic systems, it has to be purely democratic. And definitely we also had democratic process in terms of deciding the vision, mission, establishment of PEO and PSOs, and the faculty participated wholeheartedly, because they knew that they were part of the change which was happening, and they were part of the vision which the college was writing for themselves. Of course, success stories were highlighted and shared with stakeholders, recommendation letters were given, press interviews were given, PR notes were prepared, because that would only confirm that, as we mentioned earlier, part of the process of the change management process, that celebrate short-term wins. Of course, all of you are faculty members and you understand, but I must tell you, the change happens when it is communicated very explicitly everywhere. From the website to admission brochure to placement brochure to student handbook to college notice board to offices, curriculum, MDP journals, JK journal, weekly newsletter, knowledge resource center, our corridors where the visions now hangs. All of them are telling the story of the change because it has been communicated everywhere. And that is what is important for a change to happen. The journey was not without challenges. I mean, as Professor Supriya rightly mentioned, there were challenges, and the challenges started with, very high reliance that we had on our faculty members as presenters of knowledge, because the change is never easy, and we found that the faculty members were little uncomfortable initially to bring in or write their course outcome, because the course outcomes as objectives have been written for last decade or so. So they didn't want it to rewrite the course outcomes. But initially, when they realized that their program outcome and their course achievements are so low, they decided to rewrite their course outcomes. Student motivation was a challenge initially because they thought that college is doing some activity, why should they get involved? Unless they knew that is going to help in their placement, they were not participated. Challenges in design outcomes and mapping were very heavy because it requires a lot of effort and almost a rethink on the course structure. But it did happen, and it happened with faculty members being part of it. There was a disbelief in the system that, do we actually need this, or whatever we're doing were also good enough, so why should we change? There is a lack of absence of measurement of soft skills, and this has always been the case. We thought we were doing good enough, but there was no measurement. Corporate will come and say that, okay, your students are not really, as trained as we would expect them to do. But then we thought that probably we have not prepared them for the interview, or we have not prepared them with the cues as to what to expect in the interviews when it takes place. But the problem was elsewhere. But the soft skill measurement was a huge challenge, and especially writing down the notes and assessing the students for soft skills in rubrics was actually a huge challenge that we even face today. There were time constraints because we wanted to move it as fast as possible. Training were required, and these were the challenges that we faced, and we had to address them one by one, bit by bit, because we knew that we are going ahead with the outcome-based education. These challenges had to be addressed, so they were addressed with the positivity, a very clear strategy. The vision was shared with everybody. Vision statement of the institute was written by everybody. There was a collaborative and assertiveness in the process. These faculty members were on board. The entire approach was collaborative in nature, and there were discussions. Every time there was an issue, there was a debate. I remember one of my colleagues mentioned that he sat in a meeting for about 8 hours. It was an online meeting. We did it in the month of October last year, and it lasted 8 hours because things were not sorting out. But finally, when everybody is part of the change, it does happens. This was the methodology that we followed. This was the approach that we decided to follow. It is not easy. Let me be very assertive with you that you have to believe in the change, but the change does not happen automatically. And even if your colleagues are part of the vision, still there would be challenges, and they also need to be addressed. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions now.
Sir, I have addressed questions.
Yes, please.
This was maintaining the idea of this change. Was it challenge at the earliest stage or not?
Maintain the idea of G drive.
Secrecy. The secrecy matter was the idea, it should have been a secret earlier.
I understand, but why the secrecy was required? I don't understand that. See, anything that you keep a secret, people will not trust you unless it is not shared with everybody. It will not be. They will not be participating, and if they are not participating, it will not be achieved. Anything that we think is a secret ultimately ends up as non-collaborative exercise. And if you people do not participate with you, the change will not happen. There was nothing that had to be kept as a secret. It was, of course, there is a strategy. There were tactical initiatives. There were strategic initiatives. There were team plans. There was sometimes a group of only senior professors were involved. We were measuring all of it. But I don't think anything secretive ever took place as far as this process is concerned.
Any other question by any other participant? You may ask, please. Or you can write in the chat box. Any query, any other query related to today's session by any other participant? You may unmute yourself, or you can write, you can ask your question in the chat box also. Okay.
We have shared a document with you. You can browse through that document. If you have any question about the document, feel free to answer question about that document also, because that's whatever we have presented, we have given it to you in a change plan also. So it will help you to write your change plan.
Okay, sir. Now I would like to invite Diksha ma'am to please say thanks for vote.
Thank you, Aman sir, for providing me this opportunity. I would like to thank Professor Marwa and Dr. Sehgal for giving us an insightful session. And with the help of the case study, we have learned lot many things, and we have seen how the challenges, what are the challenges faced by the students and all that, and all the faculty members in conducting the how to change management model, and how the Bloom's taxonomy is related to that. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us a wonderful session and learning. We have learned a lot in this. Thank you, sir.
In case any of the participants would like to share their plan and would like to have a feedback, I have shared my mobile number over here. Till tomorrow, you have time to write your plan. And I know this was too much for you because that's the activity that needs to be assessed. And whenever the assessment takes place, it becomes very heavy on everybody's mind. And not today, but many hundred years back, Socrates mentioned, "Oh God, don't put me to examination." So I know it's tough, and all of you are under the pressure Dr. Madan has posted on you by writing that you have your change plan will be assessed, and will your certification will depend upon them. That is why I have shared my mobile number with you. Feel free to, I will not be able to take calls, but feel free to share your plan with me. I would be happy to revert back with on the WhatsApp message. I will be available on discussion on any plan till tomorrow afternoon 12 o'clock. That is the time Dr. Madan has given to you for the change plan. Feel free to share your plans with me, and I would be happy to answer it back. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now I would like to invite Shreyas sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Marwa, sir, for this valuable session. I hope the participants are able to learn many more things which are being discussed in this session. Thank you once again, sir. I would like to make an announcement that, dear participants, we are going to organize the exam in the today's after the today's last session. So please be on time and do not leave the meeting after the third session. And we will be communicating through group, and I will be posting some more links in the group. So be at now. Take a break of around 45 minutes, and now we will meet again at 2 p.m. So thank you all. Thank you once again. You can now utilize this time to take a look at the presentations which I have already shared with you. And if you have any questions and you have any problems, then you can discuss. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Professor Marwa. I think you have given a one.
Sir, Madan sir, your voice is breaking. Sir, please repeat.
Professor Marwa, are you there? Okay. Are you able to hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible now.
Okay. Because I got disconnected, so I was not able to know whether I'm audible or not. Professor Marwa, I think you have given an excellent and wonderful opportunity to all the participants because I was, I thought about it that I have given such a difficult assignment to the participants. So how they will cope up because time was limited, and leadership is a very huge topic, and a lot of things have to be covered in that, and the action plan, which is one of the most important thing. So I thank you so much from deep of my heart to give this opportunity to be available on WhatsApp and email and helping them till tomorrow 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock to review their assignments. I am heartily thankful to you.
Anything for you, sir. You are a dear friend. Right, sir. I'll take your leave.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye, sir. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye to all participants. Have a good day.
Dear all, as I have received the confirmation of feedback, which is going to be in the after the last session. So Dr. K. Lata, Mr. Somu Parande, and Dr. Ranu Bishwas has presented their consent for presenting the feedback in the last. If anyone else of you would like to speak for some suggestions and feedback in the last session, then you can put your name in the group also. The group is open to all of you, and you can post your name and you can post your suggestions in the group. And if you would like to speak in the last for feedback, then you are also invited. Please put your name in the group. Thank you once again. Thank you all.